The video game industry is gradually starting to become a ubiquitous presence in the 21st century, and all generations leading after will be able to grow up with access to thousands of different titles and a new age of entertainment. Hundreds upon millions of players every waking moment of the day are on their computers, phones, consoles, and TVs to spend hours and hours of their lives, which probably shouldn't be hours and hours, maybe just only 1 or 2. Because that research paper due tomorrow, it's probably not going to write itself. But regardless of what priorities you have in your life, a vast amount of society plays video games and it's a very central part of their lives. To some it means a lot more than just time-killing entertainment though, and to others it can even become a livelihood. You guys remember the days when you were in grade school and you would go to the nearest arcade, or maybe head over to that one friend who had every single console known to man, and you would just play games until you either ran out of quarters or parents said it was bedtime? I'm sure at least like the millennials and Gen Zs know what I'm talking about. It may just be nostalgia bias, but playing video games back then just felt so pure and quite legitimately fun. Most of us who were born between 1980 and 2000 have had some first experience with video games, typically with Super Nintendo, N64, PS1, or Game Boy Color, maybe with some of us born around 2000 to have gotten a Game Boy Advance SP, Xbox, PS2, or the ever so fondly loved GameCube. Man, that console had so many good titles. As the video game industry expanded over the past 40 years though, going through its normal growing pains such as improving game quality, what defines a good video game, developing that standard, or dealing with mass media denouncing video games as bad for your brain and poisoning the minds of kids. Good times, good times. It's become almost a central driving force in modern entertainment, and at this point in every country that has access to video games, everyone and their mothers has played at least one video game in their life, if not several. Most of the Gen Zs and millennials are joking about how retirement homes will turn from a bunch of old people playing bingo or shuffleboarding to a bunch of old people having killer LAN parties, which is definitely going to be interesting to see. But I suppose video games grew with us. It was a child just like we were when we got together with friends on birthday parties and played Smash Bros 24/7. Now the video game industry, it's well into its years and maturing ever more, and I can't help but feel that gaming has lost its innocence in more ways than one. I think the reason so many of us look back on the old school games between 1990 and 2010 with so much nostalgia and a desire to go back to that time was because not only were we young and had a different mindset playing video games, but games themselves were young. Today it just feels like every video game community in some way, shape, or form just has become so competitive, and I think that's in part of the players as well as the gaming industry. But why is that the case though? Why did video games go from being something kids would genuinely enjoy playing just for the sake of wasting countless hours to something that's pretty much turned into almost a toxic cesspool of people trying to step all over each other? Of course, that's not to say every single gamer is competitive. There still exist people who play video games for fun and with family and friends, and younger kids will experience video games with an initially pure mindset as well, but competitiveness has just slowly seeped deeper and deeper into the point where I see 10-year-olds or even younger, like 8-year-olds, develop this mentality. I don't know about you, but when I was that age, I just loved playing good old Pokemon Diamond and Pearl and just like spamming Underground 24/7. Back when video games were still young along with us, we didn't really have any expectations or standards. When you picked up your first couple games, you were amazed at pretty much everything. When you were younger, every day felt longer and more engaging because you were new to life, less than a decade in. Sure, there would be days where you felt bored, but I think many of us can agree that days back then were more fun. There was something new to experience each day. Everything you did as a child was an adventure, kind of a side quest if you will. From going to the supermarket with your parents and begging them to let you have that bag of fruit snacks or the tub of ice cream, trips to the local McDonald's for that delicious Happy Meal, going on playdates to your friend's house or sometimes a bonus of being able to sleep over, heading to church, going to swimming practice, watching a movie, all that stuff. Literally everything you did and anything you did stimulated your life. But think of those activities as you are now. They don't really seem like anything too particularly interesting, do they? Sure, going to movies or hanging out at a friend's house is still pretty fun, but not nearly to the same extent as when you were young. Because you can do those all the time now, there's no significance. The same holds true for video games. Over time, the more games you play and the more things you run into, the greater things become familiar to you. Regardless of which game you're playing, you get used to a lot of things. When all challenges created by the game are completed, people just get bored quickly. After you reach the post-game, all there's really left to do is just log on, do whatever your daily routine is, and get off. I know it seems like I'm just going on a tangent, but there's a reason I'm saying all of this. Back then, we didn't have to do anything to make games interesting because everything was interesting to us. But just like how at the age of 18 and above, movies and playdates, quote-unquote, or going to your local supermarket to buy candy is easy for us and not really anything special, we want to push ourselves to find the next level of new or the next level of interesting. And if all the experiences and challenges the game brought to us have been beaten, all that's left to do is to make our own, right? Players start taking matters into their own hands, doing self-imposed challenges like speedruns, no damage, Nuzlocke, X-only challenge, etc. We would push the game to its limits to squeeze out whatever new way we could experience the game and enjoy it. But that's just it, no matter how far we go, there are limits. PvE games often fall out of flavor unless constantly updated because even if you can change the toppings in a cheeseburger, it's still a cheeseburger. And I'm sure you don't want to have it every single day, even if you do like having cheeseburgers. Even if the game imposes various difficulty modes, algorithms are predictable. If you beat it once, you can probably beat it again. That's why games have shifted from a player versus environment focus to a player versus player focus, since players can continuously challenge each other. Even if you fight the same player over and over again, it's still a different experience because they don't have the same behavior every game. Competition's always been around since humans existed. We, as a species, desire a challenge, to push ourselves as hard as we can, to reach that next level. If games don't challenge us anymore, we'll make our own challenges, or in this case, we'll challenge each other. More and more video games are being released that are PvP. We've slowly changed from an MMORPG meta from 2000 to 2010 where you play alongside others, to first-person shooters, battle royales, multiplayer online battle arenas, all games that pit players against other players. The appeal to these games is their massive replayability span. Even if the environment is the same, each experience is different. No Fortnite game, no PUBG game, no Overwatch game, no League of Legends game is ever the same between each round, and that's what drove to their popularity. Because players constantly challenge each other to become better than each other, therein lies new experiences every time. But that kind of experience, I believe, isn't always healthy because competitive games by nature are zero-sum. If one wins, the other loses. Granted, even back then there were competitive video and board games to an extent like Mario Party, Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros, Risk, Scrabble, etc. But all of those were time waster games. One game of Monopoly didn't affect the next. Every competitive game back in the day was only competitive in the sense of that immediate game. It never transitioned. Whatever happened was just for the sake of passing time. Not anymore though. With the advent of modern games along with increased telecommunications and internet connectivity, we were given an opportunity that didn't exist back then: ranking. When you played those old video and board games, the only competition you had was with your friends and family in your immediate town. Occasionally, you might go to your local hobby shop for Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering tournaments, but it was still pretty tight-knit. But now with online play, the competition is no longer just your circle of friends, it's the entire world. And while that does sound exciting to a lot of players because it means more opponents and stronger challenges to overcome, it completely overextends one's expectations. It's easy to be the best in your class of 100. It's reasonable to strive to be the top player in your school, but is it really possible to be the best against millions if not billions of other players? Now that's in the grand scheme of gaming. Obviously, your competition in a competitive game is however many players currently play that game, but even so, trying to stand out in a pond is way easier than standing out in the ocean. No matter what degree of expectations players have, everyone strives to push themselves as hard as they can to be the best. Even if they can't get anywhere close, they still try. And that mentality puts every competitive gamer into a mental Hunger Games of sort, where it's all about who can make a name for themselves in the gaming community. The challenges become too great, and people become frustrated when they can't accomplish that challenge. Yet even knowing this, people still choose to be the very best like no one ever was. Mind you, I'm not saying that every single player is trying to be number one. I'm sure there are a lot of people who just genuinely like to play competitive games just to be challenged, but even then, if you are in an environment with a competitive atmosphere, you will feel that sense of wanting to just beat other people. Although this isn't anything relatively new, things like sports have always been one of those competitive scenes, but the thing is, the number of athletes compared to the number of gamers is astronomically different, since there are far more gamers out in the world than there are people who play sports. Besides, in sports you have to physically meet up with a person to play, and sportsmanship is usually more practiced because of the players meeting face to face. Concealing yourself under the cloak of anonymity that is the internet is a negative catalyst for poor game etiquette because people's resentments are not checked. Since a large number of competitive players are sore losers, they'll do everything they can to try to drag people down for their accomplishments, to sort of deny their own failures. The number of people in the world who willingly take a loss gracefully is few and far between. That's often the case why you see people spouting racial slurs, vulgar insults, and harboring very toxic sentiment despite them being naturally good people in the real world. In a way, winning has become synonymous with fun. If you're winning, you're having fun. If you're losing, you're not having fun. People who lose get jealous of the people who win, and people who win don't really like to be very humble with their victories, which provoke the envy of the losers. I don't think I know a single person who prefers losing more than winning, at least in video games. Even in PvE games such as MMORPGs, players still find some way to try to become better than each other. Which player has the best gear, the first skill to take down a new boss, etc. It feels like video games as a whole is just more about bragging rights and social status instead of what they're meant to be, just having fun. Unfortunately, this isn't really anyone's fault per se, it's just how we are. As much as people dislike adversity, we crave it at the same time. Even if it means stress and frustration, people still go for challenges because that's how we are, that's how we like to live life. It'd be too boring playing easy mode all the time anyway. I don't want to generalize the entire video game community because there still is a large demographic of players who play video games with their friends just for casual sake. But I made this video mostly to bring awareness to the gradual increase in competition, at least that I'm observing among players in everything they do. Not just in video games, but it even transitions to people's lives. Some games are able to preserve the essence of competition and keep it in check, but it's hard to really do that for every game when there are millions and millions of players around the world. If you got into a fight with your cousin or friends for them cheating or playing dirty, your parents would end up mostly breaking it up really quickly, but you can't stop fights on the internet. Oh well, I suppose it's not really gonna change. If anything, it makes for good drama because now I feel like humanity will find any excuse to compete over something, which is literally the epitome of the Guinness Book of World Records, and yeah, that's been around for ages, but it's only recently in competitive video games that everyone is just trying to become Hokage basically. On the plus side, it does give us something to look forward to, and I think it is better to have some form of motivation even if it's negative than no motivation at all. But I do hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. For those of you who did stick all the way to the end, I enjoy making discussion videos because one of my favorite hobbies is having long conversations. Even if it doesn't solve or answer anything, just talking about things is fun for me. Let me know what you guys think in regards to how much more competitive people are becoming in the comment section below, and whether or not you believe that it's a toxic environment. I know this video is a bit on the rambling side, but I do like to talk in a very casual atmosphere. I don't really like to make it sound like I'm just writing a business research paper or whatever. But thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again soon in the next video. Take care.